Thank you so much, David. And hello, everyone. I'm just so glad to again be back to see you all and to talk to you today about a very, very interesting issue of foreign policy and international relations. So, once again, I'm again always looking forward to our conversations together. So I hope that we will continue to put our opinions in chat and we will carry on the meaningful discussions that we have been having all for the last some time. So now, today we will be talking about foreign policy and international relations and its place in the world and the model UN and the UN itself. So that is our core areas where we will be inquiring together, reflecting together, finding out more. And then we have to understand for ourselves how do we apply this in the MUN for our preparation and research and all the different places. So that is what we are going to do. Um, so let's go to the next slide, please. The next one, please. All right. So what we have done is that I've tried to divide my thinking into two sections. One is international relations, and then the next will be foreign policy. And in international relations, we have to understand just a little bit about certain common contexts. And when we say common contexts, I mean certain definitions, certain concepts, which this international relations is built on. So we will be looking at certain terminologies. If you'd like, we can have a discussion on certain specific terminologies, and that will give us a solid foundation to really go into deeply understanding foreign policy. So I hope that we are all here together, and with reactions, we can just signify our presence here and our participation to begin with as we start discussing. Fantastic. So now let us start. Um, I want to ask you what you understand by the term relations, because that is international relations is essentially how we study and see the interactions of countries between each other. So, to understand international relations, I think relationship and relation is something we can inquire together about. So, what is it that when you hear the word relations, what do you understand by that? If you can put some words, phrases that come to your mind, and certain anything that you'd like to share. Friendships, wonderful, and connection to others, very nice. Anything else that comes to anyone's mind? So thank you so much. These are excellent ideas. Common ground, comradeship, networking, wonderful. So if I were to ask you, uh, what is your relationship to somebody else? Could you say that your relationship to somebody else may be tied as per a specific identity of yours in that moment? So, for instance, if you are coming to this call, then the identity you've taken on is of a student, a participant, a thinker, and then your relationship is kind of getting decided with me. I am also joining on this call with you. So, can we say that our identity and our relationship can be deeply tied into each other in a certain background? A yes, a no, if any other opinions you may have. I think that will be interesting. Okay, yes. So some of you definitely agree with me, and that's great. Okay. So one thing is that which is this identity that we're talking about now when we talk about international relations. This identity is the nation. And so you are exploring, we are rather exploring that this identity of a nation, how does it interact with other countries? And then what is it that becomes important as foundational concepts to understand these interactions? Maybe the science behind it, the politics behind it. So if we go to the next slide, let's go into certain important issues. So, for instance, the first one is sovereignty. I think we all have talked about sovereignty itself, that the idea that all countries, or rather states, and again we talked about what a state is. It's a governance machinery in a way. Uh, for that to have an independent decision-making ability and authority without any external interference. So, if you recall, we had even discussed together that in a very true way, there is no sovereignty really left in the world today, because financial systems influence decision making, social media trends influence decision making. So many things really take away the independence today. If you have it, but from a international relations perspective at the UN, we still attribute sovereignty as a legal sovereignty. That is legally that this is the country which is making its decisions, whether it is giving a speech, or it is casting a vote at the UN, or it is signing a treaty. Only a sovereign nation can do so. Okay. So, and yes, I think this is another very good way to put it. Thank you for sharing that it could also be seen as a legally meaningful togetherness without affecting baseline identity. Yeah, I mean we could also, yes, legally meaningful togetherness is a very good way to frame it. Um, the next concept that we see is nation state. I think again we have talked about nation state, that it is there is a country which could be a geographical classification. There is a nation which can be an identity, and cultural and togetherness classic community classification, and then there is the nation state, which then means it's a political entity which is essentially organized and governing us. So that is what nation state means. Then we have diplomacy. I think this is something again we've already gone deeply into, that diplomacy simply means a practice of negotiation and dialogue between countries. So that now I want you to I want to I want you to tell me what is the, as per you, the relationship between two words that I'm writing in the chat. So what is the relationship between power and diplomacy? Do you think that power and diplomacy go together? They go opposite ways? Does power mean, what does these two words mean to you when you look at them together? You can put them in the chat as well.
Sorry, Kashraf. Just for the guys that are on YouTube, please note YouTube is not able to stream visuals at this minute. There is a problem between Teams and Microsoft with regards to YouTube. So please join the MS Teams link that I sent you via SMS. So the guys on YouTube, unfortunately, the visuals are not coming through. It's only sound. So please join us rather in MS Teams. I will upload the Teams recording and share it also via YouTube with everyone via SMS this evening. Back to you, Kashraf.
Thank you, David, and I hope that you're all able to join our Teams call here. So now we are getting some really interesting responses in our chat. How much power a subject has influences the type diplomacy shown to others. Fantastic. Um, Power is the ability to influence the actions. So can I say that you have to be a weaker country to go towards negotiations and diplomacy? That if you are powerful, then you don't need diplomacy. You can just do what you want to. So this is something that I've just and if you disagree or you agree, what you can do is you can also keep writing why, like what you mean when you say. So yes, they do go together because diplomacy allows a pedestal to negotiate benefits that require power to be used. Okay, that's another very interesting perspective. So please keep bringing in these perspectives. And let me remind you once again that in our Model UN discussions, There is no always a fixed right and wrong answer. These are things that we are always understanding, and they can also evolve. So remember that all your opinions are equally valid and welcome, so long as they are deeply thought through. So well done. Now let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, balance of power. Now this is something that you have to understand properly. I'd say that balance of power. So what does and I'm so glad that now we are already discussing power. So what does this word mean to you when you say balance of power? Do you think that a balance of power should be equal, should be unequal? Uh, what is important for a peaceful space, a balance of power? Should it be an equal balance? Should it not be an equal balance? Uh, because this balance of power uh, decides quite a lot of geopolitical moves and policies that a country always entails. So, should be equal balance. Okay. So this is a very interesting, mature view that our friend has given, that power does not necessarily mean that you are a bully. You can still practice diplomacy. Uh, I have got a message like here which says, I just want to understand, is this a part of the module International Human Rights Law? It will speak to definitely parts of international human rights law for you if you are interested. So that will help you anywhere in human rights law, in humanitarian law, these discussions. So equal balance is okay. So now let's understand what balance of power might mean. Balance of power might mean that two countries that we are talking about in a certain situation have more or less a equal balance of power. So how are they pitted against each other? Is it the South African team and the Indian team playing cricket together, or is it the South African team playing a Zimbabwe team? Is it a equal balance? Because if the balance of power is not equal, that is where conflicts generally happen. Because if the balance of power between two countries is generally equal, and in case a conflict which could be a trade economic could be a violence oriented conflict, if all of those are taking place, so two people with equal power are technically supposed to then destroy each other, or they will reach a stalemate. So balance of power uh, being equal can mean peace sometimes. Balance of power, and remember, because power is something that is perceived, that means that how powerful you are may not be always the factor of science. So this means sometimes people's understanding of how powerful they are can really be very different. So for instance, somebody who is a overconfident person will perceive their power as more, whereas if they actually go into battle, maybe that power is not so. Somebody with humility may not perceive that power for themselves when they may have the power. So now where it makes a lot of difference is that when countries are projecting things in diplomatic, like diplomacy spaces at the UN and in negotiations, that may or may not be the actual power that is there on the ground. And that means that sometimes we will see that every media narrative will tell you that, X country will wipe out Y country, and then it does not happen. With all their weapons, everything, they have not realized there is a softer power, there is a power of citizens, there is a power in motivation, and every power is not always about the dollar or the gun or the bullet or a missile. Power itself then can mean multiple things. So this is something about balance of power which you have to understand. Now, where can the balance of power shift in a real world? It can shift when you have economic progress, when you can have technological progress. So at some point, some countries were not very powerful in the world, but they developed, say, for instance, a new technology. Could be artificial intelligence, could be missile technology, could be guns, could be knife, whatever it would be. But this balance of power can shift through military, through technology, through trade and commerce, and several other places. So don't always see the balance of power in a military context. You have to be able to see it in a more holistic way. So I hope that that is something that you're following together. And then we have something called as globalization. I think we know what we are talking about here. Interconnectedness of countries, more global trade, less barriers in trade. And then as a result of those laws and policies around the world, for now business deals and agreements to take place around, which make it easier for you to buy an iPhone, even though it may be manufactured in China by an American company, but you can buy it in South Africa. So that itself can show you how globalization is connected. This could also mean that globalization can also mean sometimes that somebody's culture is getting more visibility in another part of the world simply because they have more resources and money to spread their culture. So that is something that you can also understand, that globalization is not always about trade. Globalization can also be an instrument of propaganda sometimes, simply because of a country's ability to um, send their thoughts out, whether it is through movies, or it is through documentaries, or it is through books, or it is through plays and all of those kinds of literature as well. Finally, this is the again a very important term that you have to understand is the non-state actors. That's the final term on our slide. A non-state actor uh, is essentially differentiated against a state actor. So now, what is the state? If you recollect, state is the government. State is the government, its employees, its every instrument that is out there. So that is a state. So that means that any action, when any country, a state signs a international treaty, or when we in our resolution say that member states must do that, so this is with reference to that understanding of the word state. Now, as against that, we have the non-state. Non-state means private individuals, organizations, NGOs. So remember that non-state actor does not have a positive or a negative connotation. It simply means anyone who is not a government, or a representative of a government. So whether it's a Apple or a Taliban or a IMF or a United Nations, all of them will or big NGO, all of them can be called as non-state actors. So now why is this important? It is important because say that say that South Africa and India have a treaty of peace with each other that is signed between the two countries. That means that probably it was signed by the prime ministers, presidents, heads of states. And it says that we will not attack each other as countries. So say that is the actual treaty between two state actors. Now, say that there's an Indian ship and there's a South African ship, and they have a kind of an accident, and they're private businesses, and they have a kind of a collision with each other, and they start fighting with each other. So, does that fight mean that the treaty is violated by India and South Africa? You can put it in the chat if you think that yes, it is violated, or no, it is not violated. I can repeat my example while you put your opinions in the chat, that India and South Africa sign a peace treaty which says that none of the countries will attack each other. And then two private businesses are operating these ships between with one is owned by a South African entrepreneur, another by a Indian entrepreneur, and they end up colliding with each other in the ocean. And then these guys start fighting with each other, and people are injured. Maybe someone unfortunately gets killed also. So, is that a violation of the treaty? Yes or a no? As per your thinking, no. Okay, very nice. Very nice. So, no. Now I will give you one more example in the same. Very nice. You're all absolutely 100% correct. Now let me give you one more example. Say that the defense minister of South Africa was on this ship, but he was on a private vacation, and with his family. He was probably heading to Mauritius. I don't know. But now he also gets involved in the process. He takes up a gun and starts shooting. So now, is that a violation of the treaty when the South African minister has done so? So is that the treaty violated or not? Yes. Okay. Yes. Great. So now we have some interesting opinions that have come. That is, yes, it is violated. Some of our colleagues are saying no, it is not. We have a follow-up question. Did they go there with an intent to fight? Very nice. So I'm very happy that we are all trying to give our opinions very authentically. So here is what I will tell you, that the treaty is still not violated, for a simple reason that the minister is not on a, yes, exactly. So as written by our friend in Maureen on chat, that he was on a personal trip. He was not there in his capacity as a minister. He was not the representative of the state at that point in time. So he is a non-state actor at that point in time. He is not a state actor. And so I hope that you have understood now that non-state and state actors can also be situational. So this means that an Apple is a non-state actor till the time they are authorized by the government and they are operating on behalf of the US government to create a, say, infrastructural project in one part of the world. And some problem happens with that project and they end up creating environmental disruption, so that would be then covered as a state actor. It's an act of the state. So I hope that you have understood that state and non-state actors, while they have their own, say, individual nature of being a state or a non-state actor, in specific circumstances, you have to very clearly see who is a state actor and who is not a state actor. So this is something that I hope you are all clear with. If you have any kind of questions, please you can put them in the chat. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. International law we've talked about, and multilateralism also we've already talked about. Multilateralism is this idea of multiple countries, working together rather than two countries trying to work together on one issue. So multilateralism means simply multiple countries trying to do something together, and that is the uh, fundamental of United Nations, and you will hear this word very, very often when you are at the UN, multilateralism. So you have to really look at it. I'd suggest read further into about it. All right. Now the next is human rights. Human rights, I think we all understand as human rights sometimes that these are rights that are given to every human being because they are human. They are not given to animals because those are animal rights. They are not given to birds, those are bird rights. They are not given to robots because those may be robots' rights. It is only given to uh, human beings. Because they are human, this means whether they are a citizen or a non-citizen, whether they are a refugee or a IDP, whether they are a stateless person entirely, whether they are whoever, and whether they are a 6-month-old baby or a 60-year-old person, whatever your gender is, any identity you have, it doesn't matter, because human rights means rights given to every human being. They are also called uh, as inalienable rights. Inalienable rights means rights that you can't be taken away from you. So, in any circumstance. So, that is what human rights are about. But the important thing you have to understand is, now moving forward, the difference between, say, human rights, constitutional rights, then we have legal rights, then we have, specific rights in specific places. Then, so similarly, there are different kinds of rights, and you have to understand that if there is something written in constitutional rights specifically, then it might be a constitutional right, and you have to be very clear about this, because constitutional rights will be those which are given in your constitution. Legal rights will be those rights which are coming to you through legal provision. Specific rights can simply be that you have a club membership and you have the right to use a swimming pool. That is a specific right. Uh, a legal right could also mean that you own a particular property or a house, and you have the legal right that if anyone comes inside your house without your permission, they're a trespasser. So you have that as a legal right. You don't have it as a constitutional right. A constitutional right would be, for instance, a right to vote for the citizens. So a human right will not be a right to vote. It will be a constitutional right. There are also rights of refugees. So you have to understand, just because somebody has human rights does not mean they don't deserve constitutional rights. All of these rights, and whether whatever categories we are putting, ultimately, if they are not benefiting human beings, then they are useless. So you have to remember that the ultimate beneficiary of every right is a human being. And depending on, again, different roles they take on, different identities they have, they get different rights. But at the very base of it all is human rights. So I hope that that is clear to us. If you have any questions, comments, reflections, thinking, you can also share them in the chat. For instance, if you want to reflect on where you have seen the difference between these kind of rights, maybe around you, so you can also put those in the chat, and we can maybe look into it together. Okay, so power and influence we've already talked about. So let's go to the next slide, please. All right. So now we are at foreign policy, and I want you to tell me what are the words that come to your mind when we hear the word policy. So before we go into foreign policy, first we will clearly understand what we understand together by policy, what we mean when we use this word, and where all do you use it in your life. So can you please put some of those things in the chat? Okay. So Kagisho has said that it's a strategy. It could be a national strategy. It could be a rugby team's playbook strategy. Could frameworks and procedures, protocols and rules for engagement, guidelines. Very nice. Rules. Okay. Anything else that you want to add? Please feel free to put that forward. Can I? Um, okay. So now, why are policies important? Why do you think it is important to have a policy? Like, why can't I not have a policy at all? Why do I need to formulate policies? Anyone? Okay, they help guide actions. Very nice. Thank you, Precious. Um, Anyone else who wants to talk about it? Okay, to facilitate governance. Okay, to govern decisions. Very nice. So I'm just putting a statement in the chat, and I want to know from you. what you feel about it when you see this statement, that policy is the past. What do you understand when I use this statement that policy is the past? Okay, Precious, thank you. Past actions help guide policies. Uh, Policies are made from, yes, previous situations and experiences. This is very, yes, that is what I mean. That policies is essentially, policy is the past. It means that it is essentially, it essentially has is something that is formed because of our experiences in the past. So the reason I'm asking you is, say that initially there is a policy that you should not pluck trees from a forest. I mean, from you should not pluck fruits from a tree in the forest. And now there is a severe, and that is a policy. And now there is a severe drought, and people are going to die if those trees are not used for by the human beings to pluck fruits. So now this is something that human beings have not seen before. And in what we call is this polycrisis world where there's so much happening, every day we are encountering new situations. So can we say that policy can only help you address the issue of the past and not the present if the situation has indeed changed? Yes, Pablo has said that policies enable transparency. I agree 100%. Policies respond to the needs that we have been established. Yes. Can I also say that when we say that needs that have been established are also in the past, so what happens is that a person who was poor in the past is the person who was poor in the past has now got a business, but they continue to take on the below poverty line cards and continue to take the benefits of the subsidies of the government, uh, and uh, and that means that the needs that have been established in the past are the ones that they are using for policies and not where they might be today. Or for instance, if somebody is a human rights activist, and they have been awarded through the previous policies, and now they do something wrong, then that policy no longer should be applied to them. But then we still many times, yeah. So again, very good. So I think we are getting to a very important point where our friend has said that policies evolve and they should be adaptable. Very good. Now, why am I emphasizing this before going into foreign policy? Is because our general understanding of foreign policy is that foreign policy guides the country's behavior. But the question is, and I want you to put it in a yes or a no and then put your reason if you want to. I will argue that foreign policy does not guide the country's behavior. And those who agree with me can then tell me, so what guides a country's behavior in the international forums and with other countries? What do you think? I'm trying to argue that foreign policy does not guide a country's behavior. This is what I am trying to argue, and you can tell me if you agree, disagree. Uh, right. So, yes, Kagisho has said political will. Yes, political will, international relations guide behavior. Okay. Can I then say that foreign policy is simply the description of a country's response to certain things, and it's a description of its relationship with a country? So policy comes after relationship, not before. Can we say that that laws are only description of what is. Law is not itself anything. So policy itself is nothing. Policy can be changed. So when apartheid regime was thrown out of South Africa, every country overnight changed its foreign policy towards South Africa, its trade policies, and the international response to apartheid, which included, say, withdrawing investments from that time of South African politics and the economy to kind of weaken the government. All those policies changed overnight. Similarly, after the World War II, even though Germany and US were not particularly very friendly during the war, or Japan and the US were not particularly friends at that point. Uh, you know, um, so what happens at that point is that immediately things change. So yes, and again, like I think, Kagisho, thank you for reminding me of this thing about laws reflecting society. Very good. So the reason I'm telling you all of this, okay, Thompo, I will repeat myself on how policy governing. Okay, I'm trying to tell you that policy does not govern a country's behavior. A country's behavior, the description of the behavior is the policy. So the country has good relationships with India, so that is the foreign policy. The country's relationship change, that is then another foreign policy. But but don't get stuck with first reading foreign policy and then forgetting that it is the national interest. Beautiful. And in fact, somebody has written that as well in the chat. This class is teaching itself essentially. I'm just reading the chat and talking to you. So this is fantastic. So that the policy itself, if it is not in alignment with the national interest, then the policy will change. The law will change. So don't be always stuck that you have read a country's foreign policy, so the country won't do anything else in that situation. If the situation demands, whatever the country's response will be is the foreign policy. It is the trade policy. It becomes the military policy. It becomes the cultural policy. So, if all of us are now clear on what I mean, that policy comes later, country's interest comes first, and you should change your policy the moment the interests change. I hope that we are all together on this, everyone. If you can give me a thumbs up, then I know that the confusion is no longer there. Okay. And even if it is, I'm happy to you keep putting your ideas in the chat, and I'm again very happy to keep addressing them, even if that requires uh, more clarification. Okay. So so this is about foreign policy. Now, so foreign policy can be differentiated against domestic policy. So domestic policy is how a country runs itself in the inside of it, and then the foreign policy is the country running everything outside of it. So that is where we are discussing this foreign policy today. The foreign policy has to achieve your national interest. It means that it has to, if it is not in your national interest, then you will change your policy that we have already talked about. Can we go to the next slide, please, now? Right. So yes, policy is the past. So does that mean we should not have policies? Right. Yes, guide, I mean influence. Yes. So now, why do we need a foreign policy? Particularly, is that if I am running a country which has to interact with other countries all through the day, which means that the citizens of other countries are coming to our game parks for safaris. They are coming to see our beautiful cities. They are trading with us. Sometimes they are sending missiles to us and bombing us as countries. So they need to be clear on what our response will be. and that is the policy. So national security is a very critical part of communicating the policy. Uh, and uh, and remember that this is, again, we had already talked about the hierarchy of interests, that the first national interest is always security. So the first purpose of the foreign policy itself will always be to ensure security, to protect sovereignty, as our friend has just written. um, and then our this one very interesting comment has come in the chat, that then other foreign policy can influence our country's behavior. Absolutely. Please remember that foreign policy or anything that requires two people to exist, that means if there is no other country, then there is no requirement of a foreign policy. If we were in a world where South Africa was the only country, then we wouldn't require South Africa to have a foreign policy. There would be nothing foreign to it. So this means that foreign policy has to always operate with other countries, with other entities, and that means that it cannot be unilaterally formed unless there is one circumstance that you can think about. When can your foreign policy not be influenced by any other foreign policy? So, like, that is something that is a very interesting reflection. So you can put it in the chat. Is there a situation where your foreign policy can does not need to be influenced by any other person's foreign policy? So that you can continue to talk about in the chat. But so national interest is the first purpose. Economic prosperity, of course, I think we've already talked about a lot of this together, that after national security comes economic prosperity, trade, and so on. Next slide, please. Diplomatic relations. So I think maintaining diplomatic relations needs every country to have clarity on what your policies are. How do you see certain issues? How do you see climate change? How do you see wars and so on? How do you see human rights? So diplomatic relations is a very important part of um, having a well-defined foreign policy. Global influence. Global influence uh, is another important thing that people and states try to do. The softer power, as we call it. So, so global influence is another important purpose. Now, I'm quickly coming to the chat here. Uh, can I say that the only entity that does not get affected as far as its foreign policy is concerned with you is the one that is always the most powerful in the world? So, for instance, if there is a country called Sun and Ocean, these have no concerns about what your foreign policy is. They will continue to operate the way they will. A big country, very, very big country, which is militarily powerful, will not change its foreign policy because you have done something, because all you have is five stones to throw at them, and they have 500 nuclear weapons to throw at you. You only have $20 million of manufacturing in your country, and the other country has $20 trillion of economy. So your 20 million hardly matters to them. So these are cases where there is a highly unequal power between entities where foreign policy does not get influenced. So now you can think about, and you can in fact connect this idea of balance of power with how much influence foreign policies can have on of respective countries can have on each other. So it would be like if if I come to a forest and I meet the great African elephant, and my foreign policy is to trouble it. That great African elephant is hardly bothered by me. That will just decide its foreign policy on its own terms. And if the same I meet a very big lion or a tiger in a jungle, so they really don't care for my foreign policy towards them. They will do their regular thing and make dinner out of me. So remember that foreign policy and power have a very deep connection to each other. Can we go to the next slide, please? And again, like, you can share your reflections. Yes, okay. So this is a great way. Uh, yes. So when Trump implements his tariffs on other countries, that is exactly what that looks like. Yes. That your foreign policy hardly can do anything for influencing another country's foreign policy in certain contexts like these. Uh, and remember that this, I had already said that because this idea of power is in our own head, the actual impact of the tariffs will only be found out on US economy over a period of time, and that is when we can say that they overestimated their power, and they should have been more mindful. And I think the same discourse is happening with regards to Brexit also, where one country unilaterally decides to walk out of an agreement thinking that they are very powerful, but then once they have gone out of it, we are yet to understand the economic implications. So those, how much really they were powerful or not, is something that you only understand historically eventually. Okay. So, so I hope that that is clear to everyone. And again, like when you bring in these real life examples, I think that makes it very relatable for everyone. So please keep doing that. Now let's go to the next slide. Okay, so national security, we have already done these. And here I've tried to take a few contexts from our African continent as well, where we are looking at how one of the like South Africa's involvement in peacekeeping has been a key foreign policy for the South African government because they want stability around them. Economic prosperity, again, you will see how the discussions on the free trade zone is something that again that is the foreign policy that accomplishes a particular idea of free trade across Africa. Developing diplomatic relations, so this we already understand. Can we please go to the next slide? Again, like BRICS, I think I was reading somewhere, and I'm not sure if that's verified news, but the BRICS GDP has taken over the G7 GDP lately, and the global influence is increasing. Peace and stability, we have seen. Uh, Peace and stability, we have seen that is another critical role. And here you can see how even in humanitarian goals, a country would go ahead and pursue aid programs, rescue missions and so on outside, whereas they may not be getting any tangible benefits from that, but it is also aligned with the values of humanitarian goals of a particular country. Now, one thing that you have to also think about whenever you look at, pure GDP numbers, because I'd introduce this right now, is does the GDP number show you the power or not, like of a country? Uh, right? So, does a GDP indicator accurately tell you how powerful they are as a country or not? So, that is something that you can think about and put in the chat. Next slide, please. Next one. Okay. Now, what are the different aspects of foreign policy? Um, So one is the defense and security policy. So this means that there are countries who have, I mean, all countries have a proper security policy. This means that they know how to look at external threat, how to respond to it, how much force to use, when to use the force, when not to use the force, when to contact other countries, and then they will have friendships with those countries. We also call them alliances. And one example is NATO. Another was Warsaw Pact long time ago. Um, and then you've seen alliances in world wars. In most wars, you will see alliances. So these all things pertain to the security and defense policy. Now, here I want you to also Google a little bit about the what we call as the military doctrines of certain countries. Uh, so, for instance, that Israel uses a foreign policy in military called a preemptory, preemptory kind of strikes doctrine, which where they say that rather than responding to the war, we will preempt any threat and we will start the violence ourselves. Another country like India has something called as a non-aggression policy, where they will say that we will never be the first one to initiate a war, but we will defend ourselves. Some places you have an alliance like NATO, where they will say that attack on one person can be attack is considered an attack on all countries. So there are some people's policies where they say that that they will not import any arms and they will rather develop the arms in their own country. Some countries' policy could be that we will avoid war in every situation and we will then not militarize and do a lot of those kind of things. So so that is that. Now, with reference to my previous question, where you put um, about the country's economic strength, GDP numbers, I think you have to also, from a purely economic perspective, you have to also look at how much debt they are in, how much per capita that GDP is. So, does India's big GDP is it distributed across 1.5 billion people, and the same GDP for Japan is distributed 100 times lesser between people? You'll have to look at how much of the GDP is imports, where is their economic resource reliance? Is it outside? Are these technologies actually somewhere from outside where and they have manufacturing? So there are so many like criterias through which you can really see that maybe GDP may not be and also inflation. There are so many like such factors. So I would say that do not always confuse when you see these lists on the on internet which say these are the top 5 countries as per GDP. It means nothing. It's just a statistic, like saying that Sachin Tendulkar is the highest run getter in the world. Does it make him the best or not? Is something that's very subjective. So this is something that you all have to understand, and and I hope that that is clear to you. You have to put every statistical parameter through a rigorous contextual, analysis. You can't simply take statistic on face value. As human beings, we love statistics. So whenever somebody adds a statistic to their comment, we get convinced faster. So don't do that. Examine it, examine the very purpose of that statistic, because in many places these statistics are chosen to persuade, not chosen to show you the truth. Okay, so now security defense policy, countries have are environmental and climate policy. I think we've already been talking about the environment and climate policy earlier as well. So we'll head to the next slide. Yes, so human rights and humanitarian policy. So I think, as we have been repeatedly talking about, how South Africa has been like the absolute champion of human rights and a humanitarian policy. So that we have already seen. Cultural and again public diplomacy. So here we have taken an example of a BBC spreading the British culture, embassies of different countries organizing these different cultural events in across the world, promoting their culture. So these are all cultural and public diplomacy aspects of foreign policy. Can we go to the next slide, please? Multilateralism and global governance. So then another critical part of foreign policy for a country is how it participates in these international forums. What kind of statements does it make? How actively is it present there? It doesn't need to. Like many countries really don't care about the United Nations as a place to solve their issues. They would rather do that on the battlefield, and that is where we see the failure of Security Council and the UN at large, where countries simply choose to ignore everything that the UN says or that other countries are saying at the UN, and they just do their thing. So that is where multilateralism and global governance can be defeated very easily. Then is intelligence and information policy. So, one of the critical parts of foreign policy of a country is, for instance, intelligence gathering, how much their intelligence agencies operate outside their country, what kind of information are they gathering, what kind of intelligence missions are they running, are they only kind of intelligence gathering, or are they actively assassinating people on behalf of the government, or are they running black sites for detention sites to bypass human rights and so on. So that is the other aspect of the foreign policy. Can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, development and foreign aid and legal and treaty frameworks. So legal treaty frameworks we've already talked about. How do they look at certain treaties? How do they look at international law? And then development and foreign aid. So again, we've talked about it, like how do they, how involved are they in humanitarian missions and so on. So now next slide, please. Okay, now let's now before we go to the next section. Uh, what is important for all of us is now that you will be allocated a particular country and you have to understand the foreign policy of that country, then simply do not say, look at foreign policy now in a simplistic way. Don't say that, okay, India is friends with South Africa. Yes, they are friends, no doubt. But how is their military policy with each other? How is their trade policy with each other? How is their humanitarian policy with each other? How is their cultural policy with each other? And then in your agenda, what are the aspects of this policy which are the most important? If you are able to develop that clarity together, then you don't have to do 100 different types of research, don't have to collect all the irrelevant lots of information which may not have any bearing here. It might, you may be simply able to focus on the particular aspect that is mostly influencing that particular agenda. So, if I were to ask you that for our agenda, which is artificial intelligence and climate change, what are the aspects of foreign policy that you should first research on priority? If you can put it in the chat, please. Okay, so I will repeat my question quickly. That if you have to research for the model UN where artificial intelligence and climate change is being done, and you are representing India or Pakistan or South Africa or Lesotho or Zimbabwe or Burkina Faso, uh, so what are the aspects of the foreign policy that first you would like to research about for your own country? Can I, okay, so let me ask you that would you first look at their military policy or their economic policy? If we are looking at AI and climate change, trade economy, very nice. So this means very nice. So this means that we will be able to first prioritize the environment economic policy. What other policies do we will we look at? Can I also say environmental policies? Uh, right, biodiversity related policies. Could it also be energy policy is very critical because that governs your fossil fuels. Could it also be technology policy because technology means AI, information security, brilliant. That is something even I didn't think about. So well done. Um, and keep bringing your points. Environment, yes. So now you are really understanding why we were discussing the various aspects of foreign policy. The policies, what are the aspects? Yeah, sustainable growth and environmental policies. Can I also think about like urbanization based policies in a country? So that is where your collaboration may be with other countries. Humanitarian policy as well, very good, very, very nice. So these are the different kind of policies when we are looking at AI, even data sovereignty. Um Whether a country is not part of Paris Agreement or not, very good. So this is exactly the kind of research and thinking that we have to do on AI and green technologies. And even tomorrow, when you get another topics at another model UN, you have to be able to first decide what aspects of my foreign policy do I want to research first. Now, the larger question is, should you know every aspect of the foreign policy of a country? I would definitely say yes. But if you don't have too much time, then the first priority is towards the specific aspects that are relevant for your agenda. So, a climate and technology policy, land policy, that you have to first research. And remember that the same principle applies for both research in domestic and foreign policy. So the same both will require you to look at these are domains of policy that you're looking into, whether it is external, that is foreign policy, or it is local, that is a domestic policy. So I hope that is very clear. Okay. Now, what is the context of foreign policy in an MUN? In an MUN, foreign policy is one of the criterias for on which the delegates are judged. So adherence to foreign policy is important in the UN, in the MUN. This means that if India and Pakistan have been fighting over Kashmir for the last 80 years, and the delegate of India goes to the UN and says, for the larger interest of the global peace in the world, we are giving Kashmir to Pakistan, then that is something that will absolutely solve the agenda, but will get them 0 points in the MUN. I'm sure you can think about these kind of examples where something which is not in adherence to your foreign policy will always get you negative marking, no matter how brilliant the point is. So one more example can be that if the delegate, if you are delegate of Saudi Arabia, a fossil fuel exporting country, will you advocate for cutting of fossil fuel emissions for the whole world, including Saudi Arabia? So yes or no, you can put on the chat. So if you are a no, very good. So because you are not only, so your saying yes to this will mean you are also violating your foreign policy. So this is what I mean when we say adherence to foreign policy is essential. Uh, Foreign policy also helps you, sometimes decide your interest. That means what is benefiting you in the committee, which direction to go towards, who to become friends with. Uh, and so this is the second thing there, that if you have a very clear understanding of your foreign policy, in that case, you are able, yes, national interest, absolutely. You are able to decide, see your national interest and your allies and be with them in a bloc. The next is finalizing a negotiation framework. So negotiation framework means that if your foreign policy says that we are okay to cut our carbon emissions by 10%, I mean, that's your negotiation final red line, that beyond 10% we will never agree, no matter what happens. So that is your negotiation framework. So a clear foreign policy helps you understand how much to negotiate, how much to concede, how much do we want to gain, at what cost is it okay to negotiate, and so on. So that is what we mean when we say that foreign policy helps you have a clear negotiation framework. It also means what kind of solutions can you support and negotiate with others. Finally, block formation and resolution writing. So block, if you remember, is the collective group of the allies who are working together with a common and shared interest. And then for them to write solutions together is what we call as block formation and resolution writing. So I hope that you've understood why it is essential for you to start looking into foreign policy and rather, as you have rightly said, national interest of your country. Very nice. Now remember that because most countries in the world don't enjoy absolute power, uh, then that means their balance of power is similar. So if you don't understand the national interest of other countries, then you can't understand the national interest of your country in isolation. So this brings us back to the same point one of our colleagues, friends had mentioned earlier, that foreign policies are affected by each other's foreign policies, or they mutually affect each other at all points. For that, you need to research and understand foreign policy of at least all the allies that you have, key allies, and also your key enemies. In case of climate change, there are no allies or enemies particularly. So you will look at countries which have similar position as yours and countries which may not have similar position on the agenda as yours. So I hope that that is clear to everyone. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. Developing a viewpoint. So now this is very critical that that you have to, before you go and formulate your foreign policy and understand your foreign policies, really have a particular viewpoint on the agenda on the world. So this means that the moment, and this we had covered last session also about research. When we had talked about research as care or research as sensitivity, research to develop a holistic viewpoint. Right now, Precious, we are on the slide which titled Developing a Viewpoint. So I hope you're able to see the slide. Okay. So developing a viewpoint, we had also discussed last time as well that when we are researching, it is very important to understand what is the viewpoint from which we are looking at the agenda. Remember that the agenda is the larger story or a set of events, and your viewpoint decides what you see as a problem. So, for instance, if we are looking at climate change and you are a oil exporting country, then a climate change, like a meeting for you, will be another headache where some random countries will say some things and then they will cry a lot, and then nothing will happen because they will import your petroleum, and then so it is a headache for you. That is your viewpoint. So you will just kind of not say anything very concrete, you will say mixed things and so on. But if you are a country which is deeply affected by climate change, for you that meeting is everything. That meeting is exactly where everyone should be listening to you very clearly. That meeting means you have to lobby very hard, analyze everything very clearly, make sure that the pain of your people is heard across the world. So, are you understanding what I mean when I say developing a viewpoint? The viewpoint can be about the world, the viewpoint can be about other countries, and the viewpoint can be about the agenda itself. Now, like the small island states, absolutely, or states with big coastlines as well, which will get really badly affected with all of this. And remember that it is not just about rising water levels, it is also about increasing desertification around the world. So, if you are a big country with a lot of people to feed, and because of climate change, land is getting desertified, that means its productivity to give you crops and fruits and vegetables is decreasing. So this also means that you will have a hunger-based problem because of climate change. So that can also, and scarce water resources. We have seen in Kenya, the because of the changing water access, tribes which are dependent on their cattle and getting them to graze, they are having unneeded conflicts because of that same issue between them. So their climate change has caused actual violence in the country, and it also then that violence brings with itself so many other social issues. And that is not just the story of Kenya. I mean, it is a story of climate change around the world where you can see displacement happening, and because of displacement and people trying to preserve themselves, more and more conflicts happening. So you have to have a clear viewpoint, and that viewpoint will mean then you know what to support, what not to support, what foreign policy works for you and what doesn't. So remember that developing a viewpoint is a understanding based issue, not so much of a knowledge based issue. So once you have done all the research, you have to then sit down, reflect, and really think what is your viewpoint to this issue. Okay. And depending on countries, remember that you are only doing this MUN as a simulation. So many times you may have countries whose viewpoint you don't agree with, whose values you don't want to embrace at all. But remember that this is also an exercise of understanding those viewpoints and then debating them because now we understand them fully. So do not reject viewpoints of countries is only my request as far as the MUN framework is concerned. Once the MUN framework is concerned, you already have your own value system and your own personal viewpoint towards things. You can always come back to them. So this is just my advice to you when it comes to certain moral conflicts regarding, taking certain positions on human rights and climate change when you are representing that country. So for that particular time period of the MUN, you will have to operate from this particular viewpoint of the country and not your personal value system. Your personal value system will continue to tell you that this is a wrong viewpoint outside of the MUN in real world where this viewpoint really matters. So I hope that you are able to see that, and this will also be enable you to be more open to different countries with diverse views. So it's a good exercise for all of us to have. Okay, so let's move to the next point, please. Next slide, please. Now, how do we develop the viewpoint and we research is all that we have looked at here. And this is something that we had done in our research discussion also the last time, but I think now you can understand research from a foreign policy perspective, like how foreign policy perspective and developing a viewpoint, what are the things you can read through. So whether it's the basic information, geographical to cultural, all kind of factors, alliances, what kind of current trade deals they have, any historical situations, strategic interests of a country. So these are things that will help you understand what is your country's viewpoint on the agenda and at the UN. Next slide, please. Developing now this also means that while you're developing your viewpoint, your country's governance frameworks are very important. So understanding why your country was formed, what were the founding principles of your country, what are the belief systems, they are all shaping your viewpoint towards everything. So now remember that there is a viewpoint of a country and a culture, but then governments are changing which have different political ideologies. So this means that while a overarching South African view on things will be similar, hopefully, uh, depending on which government comes, it can radically change the actual policy behavior in the short run. So remember that the moment you get a country, don't just go to their official, prime minister's website or ministry websites. The ruling party's manifesto is a very interesting document to see. I mean, whichever political party is in majority in that country, whose representative you are, going to their political party's website and trying to see what do they really want can be an interesting experience. So if I am from India and I know that right now ANC is the party in power, I will not only look at the websites of the South African government, I would also like to see uh, why ANC was founded. What did it mean to ANC founders when uh, when they were trying to do this? How has it evolved today? Right. So Mr. Dubey, the founder of ANC, right, like what was he really thinking versus the today's leaders, what are they thinking, what is their priorities. So all of this becomes important to understand. Then where is this government? Is it a government with different allies? Does it enjoy a full majority in the house so they can do whatever they want? Are they more compromising because of the domestic factors? So all of that you have to really understand. So I hope that you are clear about how to develop a viewpoint now from a country's perspective before you go into defining its foreign policy. Okay, next slide, please. Now, where can you understand this from is sources. Now, I want to discuss with you what we call as valid sources. This is a very important part for you. So, valid sources versus invalid sources. When we say valid sources of research, these are sources of research which are defined in the MUN protocol as the official sources that you can use to submit things in the main MUN. Now, what this means is if you want to tell us that South Africa is a party to Paris Agreement, then you cannot show me a Wikipedia page and say that, sir, this is the Wikipedia page and it says so. You have to show me the official government's website or the treaty's international page, which says list of signatories as South Africa or a South African government. There's a news article, media article, which says South Africa has just become a party to the Paris Agreement. So, do you understand that valid sources cannot, I mean, it also valid source cannot be that somebody messaged you on Instagram that South Africa has just joined the Paris Agreement, or you can't say that the source of this information is my dream because I really dreamt of it yesterday. So that is the source of my information, or the fact that my friend and I were talking and he or she told me that that is the case. You can't make up facts. So that is why valid sources are very clearly defined. Okay. Now, the underlying principle of the valid sources is the following that I'm telling you. One is UN website and international forums. Now, what I've written in the slide in the sources, and if you want to take a screenshot, you can. You all this is also available on our MOOC platform, as David would tell you later on. But all these are already available. So the first premise is UN websites. Second is government websites. Third is multilateral other forums, and then the fourth is media agencies. Now these media agencies can be in most MUNs. Reuters is what is the media reports that are allowed besides the UN news. But any state UN now any state led media agency. So for instance, for the government of India, we have something here called as, I'll just put it down. It's very irrelevant, but I'm just putting it still. Doordarshan, this is the name of the official Indian state media. And this is a state actor under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting in India. So this means that if you are representing India and you get an information from this Ministry of Information and Broadcasting or Doordarshan or Reuters, you can use that report, but you can't use this Doordarshan report about a fact in South Africa. For that, you have to first see which is the official South African media agency, and then you have to go towards that. So I hope that you've understood the valid sources. Now, say that you find a NGO report which says something about a human rights violation allegedly that has taken place in a certain context. Can you quote that report in the UN? Yes or no? Anyone, what do you think? Like, can you quote an NGO report in the UN? Say Amnesty International or human rights. How do you say a Human Rights Watch or climate change, some big foundation? Yes. Can somebody challenge the veracity of that report simply because it is not a valid source? Yes. So this is important for you to understand that when you give a NGO report, can somebody challenge that source? So saying that this is not the correct information, we have a UN report which says otherwise. Yes, they can. Exactly. So remember that in the MUN, as per the protocol, the UN, like the MUN folks, will first expect you to submit the reports that are here on the screen. And if there is anything conflicting with that, they will have to go with the official reports. That is what valid sources are for. But do you think that all these agencies, whatever reports we have put in, will always give us accurate information? Not really. Because those can be governed by, again, what to publish, what not to publish, who can publish, who cannot publish. These are all very controlled, verified channels. So, can you quote a Amnesty International report to influence opinions? Absolutely. Can you Okay, one more very interesting thing is say that the UN says that human rights violations have taken place in DRC and the government issues a report saying they have not taken place in DRC. So now which report is more important? What do you think? DRC's report. Kagisho, it will depend on where your national interest is. If you are benefiting from the DRC report, you will go with DRC report. If you are benefiting from the UN report, you will go with UN report. If you are benefiting from not recognizing any of these reports, then you will go there as well. So remember that even choosing the source and the validity of source, you will decide what benefits you. And one of the key examples of that we see is probably the American president's Twitter page, where whatever source he likes, he just retweets that. He doesn't need to really see whether it's a valid source, it's a conspiracy theory, it's a meme page from somewhere, it's just a sarcastic remark somebody has made. Wherever we have noticed that sometimes political leaders often use misinformation which will not be in these valid sources, or they will commission a study in the valid sources and politicize that information itself. So this is about the valid sources. I think, David, we probably have come to a end of this presentation. No, okay. Yeah. So we will now just stop this presentation. And I want to talk to you about now how are we applying the foreign policy in a real sense. So you have already understood that foreign policy you can use to decide who your allies are and so on. But how do you communicate and use it in the speech? That is the last quick 2 minute, 3 minute discussion I'm having with you for this call today. Then we will be closing then I'll hand over to David. So once you know your foreign policy, you don't always have to keep announcing it to people. Right. So remember that foreign policy does not need to be explicitly quoted always. Foreign policy is something you understand and you decide as per your interest. So that is one place. However, if you are, communicating about the long-standing relationships between India and South Africa in your speech, so then you will say that India and South Africa share a 30-year-long diplomatic relationship, which expands over trade, economy, culture, medicine, people, and so on. So you are essentially then using your foreign policy to declare somebody as your ally. You are saying that in line with the cultural values of our country, we will always stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people. So so your foreign policy will guide your amount of cooperation, the amount of uh, rebuttals you are doing to a particular country. So if you're friendly with a particular country, you don't keep asking them critical questions all the time. Some places strategic silence is very important as well. Or if your friendly country has done something wrong, then sometimes saying that it could have been done better rather than saying you are wrong is also a way of supporting them by just mellowing down the impact for people in their speeches. So absolutely, to the question that would your policy guide the tone of your speech and conclusions? Yes, it will also govern how sweet you are to another country. And remember, sweet does not mean talking nicely to everyone. That you have to do anyway because you are in diplomatic protocol. It is about how much concessions to give somebody or not. It is about how harshly to criticize a country or not. So this is all about foreign policy and international relations. Remember that some of these are really implicit in your actions. So foreign policy is understood through your actions. Some places you may need to quote it by saying that we have a NATO charter or NATO agreement with each other. Some places you will say that we have signed Paris Agreement, so that governs our environmental policy. So you have to be really intelligent about where it's needed and where it's not needed. And whatever ultimately you do in furtherance of your national interest is the real foreign policy. So don't be bound by it if it is against your national interest. So this is where I will conclude my piece. And thank you so much, everyone. Once again, so much to learn, reflect together with all of you. And thank you for sharing all your opinions. I'll just hand over to David now. And I hope that once you're getting your countries allocated, you will now start researching about foreign policy and really develop a more nuanced and a deeper view across different domains for the foreign policy. So now, when you have go back, research about your environmental policies, technology policies, all those kinds of things, and become more nuanced about it. So thank you once again, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next session. And I hope that you're following up on the platform. I was seeing today also on all those who are actively, finishing exercises and making good progress. So my appreciation and admiration for all of you for doing that. David, over to you. And thank you once again, David, for running the call despite all the technological challenges life has thrown at us today. Over to you, friend.
All right, thanks, Kashyap. Much appreciated. And there we go, students. I have posted the MOOC course in the chat. Just remember, it's free. You just log in with your student details and you can actually go through all the materials that we've been covering so you haven't missed anything. For the guys on YouTube, I will share this recording and upload it this evening already. Hopefully the hotel internet can hang on. And then I'll upload and share SMS with you guys. So I hope to see you on Thursday. As Kashyap said, we are going to start allocating the countries to you, so you guys can start doing a bit of homework with regards to that. Because remember, in September, in the the fourth week, we are having the summit where you are going to practically apply all these things that you're learning, how to engage and form a resolution, how to type it all up. So it's going to be a hands-on practical sessions with you guys. So why not email? Yes, okay, fine. I'll also send it via email as well. The link that is for the recording. So yes, guys, we are building up to that, and I hope you guys are enjoying it. And again, we'll see you again on Thursday, and I will send out an SMS as a reminder as well. So have a lovely evening further, everyone, and thank you once again for attending.